it came upon me to actually group together recent thoughts and reflections that basically circle around finishing this never-ending project, Return to Medyka. This project has been in the works for such a long time. It's quite possible that it will never be finished, and whatever is left out of this, it will just be reflected by those remarks that this one will be the first in the series of. But actually, when I say that it might not be finished, I'm exaggerating because it is actually offline and it's ready to go, and I just need to figure out how to mm, take care of the post production and the music, and which is very important, proper sound design and image clearing, which it needs big time. So there will be several issues that came to my mind recently, and one of them will be structuring the attachment to our favorite parts of the gathered material. And later on, we'll move to the documentary usage of talking heads, combining the intimate material with talking about our heroes by third persons, and also a certain meekness or a lack of it, and pluses and minuses in terms of shaping up a documentary story. That's going to be probably in later episodes. So here we go. This is the beginning of something that might turn out into a few part exploration. Okay, so I have an experience that happened to me a few days ago, and I'd like to talk about it. I want to process it through my own psyche, and there is a possibility that it could have a slight influence on the way one can think about working on a documentary material. So, what happened was a colleague of mine who shall remain totally anonymous. We don't know whether it was a woman or a man, and we don't really know about the subject matter of the project. I want this to be completely undecipherable simply because I'm not sure if my comments to that particular project that was given to me for feedback were truly appreciated by the author. But what happened was that I was given the chance to look at somebody's work, almost finished, but still subject to possible changes. And because it was framed to me like that, I thought that it was an invitation to think not only critically, but sort of creatively about possible organization or reorganization of the material. That is truly critical because there is a difference between looking at some material that you still know can be reshaped and organized and strengthened in various ways versus looking at a finished film. Usually when we consume a finished product, it's usually, oh, that was good, that was bad, maybe I would do something different, or maybe that was great. But this window of the truly active engagement between us and the material given is much less than if it's between us and the material that is not fully finished and sort of awaits our possible intervention. So that is a very important distinction that I want to make. I think that this particular chance to view somebody else's work, which was again potentially open to suggestions, creates entirely different breadth in which one thinks about not only the other work, but also sort of thinks back about one's work. Because, to be quite honest, I am also in the process of finishing my own documentary. Of that documentary, I can actually talk about and refer. It's called Return to Medyka. And I had tremendous amount of various adventures, narrative and structural adventures with this project. And there are certain parallels between the problems that I have been facing in my material with the problems that I saw in the material of the other filmmaker. So that's the context. There are a couple of points that or areas that can be sort of approached in this comparison model. By the way, I also think that when you try to hold in your mind two different kinds of work, irrespectively of their quality, it somehow already almost by default opens up one's thinking. Like, for example, I don't know about you, but I sometimes find myself drawn to comparing at the same time two things that happened in terms of consuming media at the same time, close to each other. Let's go back to my encounter with work in progress by another filmmaker, and then comparing it to my own struggle with my own material. Number one, what happens? And it's a huge danger. A filmmaker gets attached by a filmmaker, I mean myself and the other filmmaker, him or her, we don't know who that person is. There is this tendency to get attached to certain ideas, structural or formal ideas, and we think that it's awesome. And that those ideas are so potent that they can organize the entire narrative. In my case, for example, the idea was that my project is moving sort of back and forth between what happened to Poles being deported in Siberia in 1940 from a small town in Medyka on the current Polish-Ukrainian border, and what happens in this very town recently when the town is touched by the wave of escapees from Ukraine after the full-scale attack in 2022. And then there is this. There are a couple of scenes that refer to the fact that the attack of the present day somehow reverberates with the events of the past from 80 years ago, 80 plus years ago.
Wszyscy jesteśmy w ogromnym szoku i potępiamy to, co się wydarzyło. Po drugie, jasne jest, że istnieją wyraźne dowody zbrodni wojennych. To armia rosyjska była w Buczy.
A naszej wywózki to ci nie przypomina.
Wtedy wojny jeszcze nie było.
And I was that sad that this should be the beginning of the film because it actually has the past and the present somehow together, and it's a perfect start to tell the story. And for a long time, in many of editing versions, that was the beginning, and I was super proud of myself. You know, people are watching horrible news from Ukraine on television, and they say, well...
A naszych tych ci nie przypomina?
Isn't this bringing up the memory of our event? The events from the 1940 are actually being recreated by the dwellers of the village, and it happens almost at the same time when the Ukrainians are being attacked by the Russians after 2022. So there is a strong parallel. Anyway, I was thinking that this scene where the people are watching television with the full horror on the screen, it was confusing. For many reasons, it was confusing, or it was not strong enough, and yet I was attached to it big time. So, what do they say in Hollywood? Kill your darlings. Kill your darlings.
There is an interesting take on this idea on one of the Brandon Sanderson's lectures.
How do you come to terms with killing your darlings, which is a famous screenwriting terminology for this sort of thing?
You know, if we think that there is some great solution that will make gold out of our storytelling, many times it turns out to be a darling that has to be let go. In my case, it was just moved to another place where it serves way better.
Sanderson actually proposes another way of handling your darling, which I find interesting. It doesn't apply to my case, I hope, but nevertheless what he says is worth bringing up.
You tell yourself a lie, okay? I'm going to tell you what the lie is. I will find a much better place for this character, plot, or idea where it can shine in its own story. And then 9 times out of 10 you won't, because that idea actually wasn't that great. You just built the whole story upon it. The story then evolved, because the process of building a story is where the real creativity takes off. And as you start writing it, you start applying all of your ideas, and that thing that started you actually is not as good as the rest of it, and part of you realizes it. Once in a while, that 1 out of 10, that lets you have plausible deniability on your lie. Once in a while, that 1 out of 10 becomes its own story, and it deserves that space and time.
In the case of the material that I was given to give advice on, it was a certain approach to a subject that kind of was based on making it very, very personal and subjective. And for many reasons, I don't think that it works. And it sort of weighs down on the story and the structure and the impact. So the number one lesson that I'm getting, and of course, you know, the filmmaker doesn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear my subconsciousness telling me, don't put this scene at the beginning, as my esteemed colleague, filmmaker, doesn't want to hear, do not use this subjectifying approach to your storytelling. So kill your darlings, be very careful about things that you think are most important. And not only most important, but also that they are fundamental to your storytelling. More often than not, they turn out to be seemingly most important.
One more idea worth considering from Brandon's lecture.
I almost always throw away my first chapters, often my first several chapters of a given book, and write them over once I'm finished. Throwing away your early chapters is really common in the industry.
This entire concept, actually, of starting with something and then realizing that this is not something that one wants to proceed with, or in other words, killing your darlings, is actually quite complex, because what does it mean, your darlings? Are they really yours? And what makes the darlings darlings? I think that there is way more to explore here, but maybe we should keep that for later musings.
It's almost like somebody said somewhere, and I vaguely remember this, but I think that it was a quote kind of parallel to Kill Your Darlings. If you edit a film, forget the best things that you have. Only when you forget the best things that you have, you will find a way into the material. very confusing. When I was going to American Film Institute for reality-based programming classes, they were saying, rule number one, get the best part, talking about television project. Rule number one, get the best part at the beginning of the show, because people don't have time to wait. If you have something cool, start with it.
But again, what is the best? And how does the best relate to your darlings? And what is actually the scale of the values, of the evaluation, of the gradation, of the quality and importance of your material? It's all complicated. For now, happy documentary making. See you next time.